The Boston Bruins continue to win on the ice. They've only lost once in regulation all year, but there's a little disturbance in the Bruins family after Milan Lucic was arrested. We'll have the Bruins reaction and why they're being so successful on the ice. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. And now you can hear us on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just do a search for Locked On NHL. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Boston Bruins, Ian McLaren. And right now, Ian, on the ice, things going very well for the Bruins, but a little hiccup off the ice. Milan Lucic arrested after a domestic dispute. The Bruins had some reactions to it over the weekend. Talk to me about what happened and what the Bruins' reaction. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, so I guess on Saturday morning, there were some rumblings on social media that something was going on with Milan Lucic off the ice, and it came out later on in the day that he had indeed been arrested for a domestic incident. And obviously, first and foremost, the concern was for his wife, Brittany, and for their three children. And the biggest thing at the moment is that they are safe and that they get the support that they need. That's the biggest consideration here for sure. And that was echoed by Boston Bruins captain Brad Marchand. The team was aware of what had happened, and he was asked about it after the morning skate on Saturday, and he expressed the same thing. The Bruins are a family, and that extends to players' partners and children and all that. And he expressed obvious concern for Brittany Lucic, for the kids, and even for Milan, who obviously needs some help in his own right. And, you know, there will be an arraignment, I believe, on Monday. Certainly he needs to be held accountable for his actions. He needs to seek some help. So he has been placed on an indefinite leave of absence by the Boston Bruins. You know, he was brought in to kind of fill in the leadership gap that was left by David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron retiring. There was much hype about his return, not so much for what he can bring on the ice, but just his personality and being a fan favorite from the Stanley Cup team back in 2011. All that's out the window at the moment. I can't see him coming back to the team anytime soon. He had been out of the lineup since early in the season anyways, with the foot injury. It would have been a different scene, I'm sure, in the locker room if he had been around more lately, but that hadn't been the case. And, you know, they were able to put that aside and focus on the game at hand, and were able to beat the Montreal Canadiens on Saturday night. But certainly something that's hanging over them, and not something that anybody wanted to have to deal with, of course.
How do you think this affects Milan Lucic's future long term? And I mean, do you think we'll see him back this season? Or,
I mean, based on what is being reported about the incident, it's very hard to imagine him being back with the Boston Bruins this season. At the very least, we have to wait and see what comes of the charges and the court proceedings. And I would expect that there could be, you know, at least a time in the NHL player assistance program on top of that as well. But he was kind of a fringe lineup guy as it was, a fourth liner. And with all this going on, I can't see him coming back to the Bruins, especially during their centennial season when they're celebrating the history of the team. It's just not necessary to even bring him back if this was cleared up. Based on the reports, yeah, it's he's only on a 1-year contract. Not enough time for everything to kind of fall into place for him to come back. So I don't expect him to come back anytime soon.
As far as on the ice, you mentioned the win over Montreal. Still only one regulation loss, and here we are approaching American Thanksgiving. What has been the biggest reason for this surprise start? I mean, people thought the Bruins would be good, but not this good.
No, I mean, it's crazy to think that they had the record-breaking season last year. There were some questions coming into last season about Brad Marchand being injured, Charlie McAvoy being injured, and they still went out and had that record-breaking season. Coming into this year, expectations were, that they would regress, obviously, from last year, and how they would withstand the loss of Bergeron, Krejci, Taylor Hall, a bunch of guys who left that they had picked up before the trade deadline. But somehow they just keep going. David Pastrnak is proving to be one of the best players in the NHL and creating offense on his own, which is great to see. He's on a career track in terms of goals and assists for the season, so he's helping set up some plays. Charlie McAvoy, all-world defenseman on the back end, is a huge bonus for the Bruins. The goaltending, though, is certainly the biggest reason why they are able to compete. Last year, Jennings Trophy winning tandem in Linus Ullmark, Jeremy Swayman. Ullmark led the league in pretty much all categories. And now it's kind of reversed where Swayman is leading the league in save percentage, goals against average, and Linus Ullmark is still very, very good, but not quite at that level. And, a lot of NHL teams, they have one legit starter and then a backup that they try to plug in to fill some holes. You look at Tampa, they lose Andrei Vasilevsky, struggled to, as much as Jonas Johansson has been able to step in there, not the numbers that you would want for sure. And the Bruins have the luxury of putting out a Vezina winner and a Vezina candidate every single night. And there's no nights off for the opposition in terms of Boston's goaltending. And that's, if I had to pick one reason why the Bruins are as good as they are, it's that. And Jim Montgomery's system is certainly helping the goalies succeed night in and night out. And it gives the skaters the confidence to be able to do their thing, knowing that if there is a misstep, they're covered in net with both of those elite level goaltenders.
And those goalies seem to have a very, very constructive relationship between the two of them.
Yeah, definitely. There's no animosity there whatsoever. Quite the opposite. In fact, it's quite a bromance between those two guys. They're fine rotating. It's been an equal split, even rotation this year. Each guy knows the expectations. They're supportive of the other. They celebrate each other's wins, and it's really a special relationship that they have for sure.
All right, Ian, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Definitely. Podcast is available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube at Locked On Boston Bruins. And people can find me at Ian C. McLaren.
All right, Ian, always a pleasure. I know you'll keep us up to date on all things Bruins all season long.
Definitely. Thanks, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers.